It's been a while since I've made any content for this channel, and if I'm absolutely honest, after I dropped my last video, I was pretty much done with this work. It's really gotten to, it became painfully obvious that the narrative that seems to resonate with so many people is this one of apathy and weakness on one end, and on the other end, this pseudo masculinity that's portrayed in every adolescent fantasy that one man could think of. After fielding some of the comments and thinking about some of the questions that the little followers of various cults posed to me, it really started to seem like an insurmountable task. And there's nothing wrong in my life that makes it such that I need to do this work to sustain my life. So it started to lose its importance. It started to seem like a waste of time. But like I've spoken about many times, God works in crazy ways, and I ended up coming back to this after a surprise visit from a really good friend of mine from South Carolina. His girlfriend and his sister that he just realized that he had all were swinging through Texas, and they came by to check me out for a few days. And during that time, instead of doing what we normally do and drinking ourselves into the ground, we simply sat up and talked about life, about the state of affairs in America. And his little sister is a freshman in college. And so she added a different texture to the conversation because she's young. And over the course of the weekend, we did some deep dives on some things. And I merely shared my opinion about it. And one of the things that I noticed that kind of made me feel uncomfortable was the fact that little sister just seemed to be fixated on me. And I didn't know if she thought that I was insane or what was going through her mind. But every time I looked up, she was just looking through me. So before they left, we were talking about just, the future, where she was going, was wishing her well, and all of the, just doing the typical stuff. And this little 22-year-old girl said something to me that was like a message from God. And she said, when you talk about things, you remind me of my dad and my granddad. My friend doesn't have a good relationship with his father, like many of us. And he's grown up into a hurt man because of this. But little sister was taken care of. So they have opposing views of this man. But in this exchange, she said, I wish that you could come talk at my school. I wish that you could have an influence on the guys at my school, because these dudes listen to guys like Andrew Tate, and you can just see, you can hear how douchebag they are. And it made me laugh because she had no idea that I had a channel. She had no idea of any of that stuff. And for her to bring it to that, I literally cracked up laughing. And, we talked a little bit further, and she said, you made a few comments about how these young men, how their elders, how their mentors, how their leaders should have taught them better. And she said, what you don't understand is you are the elders now. You are that person. That's your position. That's what God put you here for. And it shook me a little bit, because it's, who's this kid to tell me this? Who is this? Who do you think you are? And so after they left, I kicked it around, resisted it a little bit, but I never stopped thinking about it. And my grandmother's words when I was a young kid, when she explained to me how I was going to see the end of this system of things, and that I was going to have to be a strong person through this, and that I was going to be a leader of men. I remember her telling me that, and it didn't make sense. And then 40 years later, to have this little girl say this and look back at what I'm doing with this channel, and I realized that to walk away from this is to quit a fight simply because it wasn't easy, simply because the odds were against me. I kind of like those kind of fights. So here I am. The question that I want to ask is, what is a man? What is a man? What does it mean to be a man in today's culture? I look at the influences that young men have, and it kind of makes me sad because they're really they're getting their information, they're getting their guidance in life from influencers, people who have a vested interest in the attention economy, getting them to tune in to their typical brand of BS and tune out of what really matters in life. And things like, spinning plates, having a bunch of money, buying a bunch of material things. The focus is on everything that doesn't really matter in life. And in the pursuit of these things, we miss the things that truly matter. We miss the events, the occurrences, the experiences, and the relationships in our lives that make up the fabric of our life. And so when I look at what men have to choose from, the leaders, the heroes, the idols, if you will, that young men look to for guidance, leadership, and counseling. One of the guys that posed the question in my last video said, if not these guys, then who? And the more I chew on that, the more I struggle to find anywhere to point my finger, because my opinion is that you shouldn't have any person that you're following to the point where you're listening to what that person says, where you're leaning into every word that they say to get your direction in life. You are supposed to think for yourself. You're supposed to have a plan, a pattern for your life, and follow that thing. Have lines for your life that you don't draw on the outside of, but instead we live in this weird construct where people get all of their affirmation from the outside. In my opinion, the like button is probably one of the worst creations and has had the most devastating impact in our culture. Subscribers, followers, this mindset, these things coupled together have created a sick atmosphere, a sick society where people have degraded themselves and have made themselves into just characters for the sake of views, which comes, it comes with monetary gain if you economize people's attention properly. And so I don't see anyone that anyone needs to look at or look to like that. But in answering that question, what I would tell anyone who comes into this space, anybody who watches this video or content like this, if you're looking for an example of what a real man is, not a fake man, not a Hollywood construct, not this arrested development, juvenile mindset that seems to have pervaded masculinity, but real men. One of the fundamental things that you need to understand is that real men have a sense of honor. Real men are based in truth. Now, two examples that I want to use right now because they're in the same sphere on many scales and they're in the public eye, so most people know who I'm talking about, is Sean Strickland and Andrew Tate. Now, I've made several videos on Tate and I've swayed in my opinion of him because I don't come from a background of purity and honesty. I've done things in my life that I've paid the cost for that I'm not proud of, but it's made me who I am. The difference between me and him is I'm honest about the shit that I did, and I don't try to blame anyone, the matrix, the system. It's the decisions that I made. It's the choices that I made that led to the outcomes that I got. And in dealing with that and dealing with the consequences of those choices, I became the man that I am today. And so I don't knock anyone for their hustle. That's why I, initially stood on Tate's side in his trials and tribulations. But the more that I watched him and listened to him, the more I realized that he's full of shit and he's really a loser with a bunch of money. His influence on young men is impactful because young men have no leaders. They have nobody to guide them. They're looking for a strong figure. They have feminized all the comic book heroes. All the supermen are now little petite women doing the job that men used to do. And so there's nowhere to look. You can't even look You can't even look to that fantasy world to see a strong man. So I get the appeal. But when a man's whole character is built on deception and lies, one can't negate that. You can't just dismiss that and say, yeah, but he's got a nice car. Yeah, but he wears, $2,000 flip-flops. Yeah, but his purse costs $4,000. I'm a grown ass man. I'm a real man, and I've run in the circles of money. Real men don't act like that. That's a feminine mindset. But because young men don't understand that, they don't see that. All they see is this procured character. It's easy to fall for it. I get it. He's a salesman. He's good at lying. He's good at selling. He's good at selling the dream. That's how he made his fortune. That's how he continues to make his fortune. But he's based in lies. The stories that he tells about his youth are lies. The stories about his father are decorated highly. They're fabricated a lot. Lies. There's no real truth. His whole existence is based on lies. And that's a problem for me. When you look at Sean Strickland tells the truth to such a painful scale that watching it and watching this man go through the emotions that, relive the emotions at 30 that he felt when he was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and not be afraid to show the world that, rather than putting on this false bravado and acting like his dad was some sort of hero that forged him into the fighter he is. He could tell that story. He could tell that Andrew Tate BS story about how he took the neglect and abuse of his father, and instead of letting that break him, turned him into the UFC. He could do that. And dumb people would gobble it up. But Sean Strickland being honest, Sean Strickland being truthful, even though it's abrasive and vulgar at times, it's the truth, man. It's the truth, and it's a truth that I think that many young men in our culture, they tap this down. They try to hide this pain, and they construct a character that they show the world that is meant to protect that hurt little boy. I identify with Sean Strickland way more than I can Andrew Tate. Outside of living the hustler life, outside of making money by nefarious means, I don't have any relation to Andrew Tate. When I look at his denial of what kind of psychologically abusive man his father truly was, he almost has Stockholm syndrome. He deifies this man who at every turn belittled what he did. When you gain enough experience in life, when you've dealt with enough people who have dealt with trauma, when you've healed your own trauma, when you've looked at the little kid that you've been protecting with the mask that you wear in life, it's easy to see other men who are hiding behind the construct that they created to protect themselves. If you go back and you look at these young men, there's a consistent theme on both of their lives. Andrew Tate's psychological and mental abuse that he suffered at the hands of his father caused him to do all of these things, from going on the real world and constantly seeking external validation through celebrity. That's all he's wanted to be. All he's wanted to do is be a celebrity. All he's wanted to do is be big enough to where his father could finally see him. And now that his father's gone, he's almost taken on this character to where he's become this. Now that his father's gone, he can deify him and make him into this larger-than-life character, and that's what sons should do. Sons should feel that their fathers are superheroes. But when their fathers are abusive, tell the truth, tell the story. It's okay to love a man who is broken, because chances are really high that the father who mentally dogged out that son was done so the same by his own father. Sean Strickland is a monster right now. Sean Strickland has a short fuse, and he hasn't learned to deal with that little boy that he hides on the inside. But the difference between Sean and Andrew Tate is Sean uses the pain honestly as a sword and shield to go through life. He explains his disposition by explaining these things. He makes fun of painful things, and it really falls into the motto that you laugh so you don't cry. Sean is publicly going through the hard internal work. He's looking at the man in the mirror, and there's something that he sees that he doesn't understand. And you could see that when he broke a little bit, when Duplessis used the same trauma that he uses as a weapon and a shield, it hit him. It breached his defenses. And the real person who's on the inside of Mr. Strickland showed. You could see the emotionality. You could see that while he laughs at his own pain, that it infuriates that little boy that anybody should laugh at what he went through. I get that more than I can explain. Once he's able to come to terms with that reality, once he's able to curb and deal with that, he will enter into the next level of what he is to be as a man, if he doesn't wreck himself before he does that. But I think that if you were to look for an example of what a real man is, what a real man looks like, and you were to have these two choices, I would tell young men, hands down, look at Sean Strickland, because he understands that the worth of a man has nothing to do with the name of his slippers, the name or the value of his purse. Any of those things that some would have you believe are so important, they're not. In the grand scheme of things, when it's all said and done and you are counting down the last seconds of your life, you're not going to think back on how awesome your flip-flops were that you bought because the top G told you to. You're not going to concern yourself about the car you didn't get. You're going to think about the experiences that you missed. You're going to think about the little things that you took for granted because you were trying to be this pseudo man, when what it took to really be a man, to really be fulfilled, to really find your direction, was already around you the whole time. The answers of what it means to be a man was already in you the whole time. But so many people wait until it's too late to figure it out. It's not about your money. It's not about how many followers you have. It's not about anything that the external world, there's nothing that the external world is going to give you that's going to help you validate yourself as a man. That comes from what you are. That comes from who you are. But we all have scars that have healed from events that have happened in our lives that have led us to the place where we're having this conversation in the first place. The first answer to what is a man has honor. A man is honest. A man is accountable for his actions.